But my home is in you. You know what'll happen, right? I'll just disappear inside of you forever.
You define me, Sora, the same way that Ventus does. We are brothers who together make a greater whole.
What's this?
I heard about this new game.
7 black pieces. And?
Just watch.
In Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, we see the Master of Masters explain to Luxu that the Dandelions are key to the erasure of darkness, in that the black box, while its contents are still unknown, it stated that it contains the method for destroying darkness, and also explains that Daybreak Town, both real and data, simply serve as a breeding ground for strong enough Keyblade wielders to make their powers strong enough to handle the darkness and win. In this same update, we learned that not only is Luxu supposed to serve as a waypoint for the Master Masters to allow him to travel to the future, but the 7 pods are also tied to the 7 lights, and also there's another term called the 7 crowns. And not only that, but the Master has also tasked Luxu with placing an unknown person in a lifeboat or the Ark and calling them the true Dandelion. But what could all of this mean? Who are the 7 crowns? Who are the 7 lights? And what is the Master trying to do? I will attempt to answer this in my Kingdom Hearts 7 crowns theory. So this last Union Cross update has everyone in awe of how much stuff was jam-packed in these cutscenes, and everyone is taking note on what we saw and what we hear people say in these cutscenes. But for me, there are some things that play over and over in my mind that I need to get to the bottom of. First off, the box. What the heck is in the box? First off, I doubt we will learn what's in it in the next Union Cross story update, considering that the revelation should be given in Kingdom Hearts 4 or something like that. But I was certainly taken aback when the Master confirms that the box has something to do with his goal to end darkness once and for all, which makes Luxord saying the box contains hope makes sense. But then another question pops up when thinking about the box, and that is, where did it go after back cover? Luxu was tasked with hiding it somewhere before the war started, and since then, it hasn't really appeared until Xehanort's defeat and Sora's disappearance after the Second Keyblade War in Kingdom Hearts 3. And this is right when the foretellers come back. But where did it go? One could say that Luxu just hid it really well, which is why he tells Luxord to find it to ensure that no one touches it. But remember what Maleficent said in Kingdom Hearts 3.
I mean, the box does not exist now.
The box doesn't exist yet. It is not of this world, and that her and Peach should wait for the destined moment, since a Keyblade War will soon commence. So the box's existence was tied to a war, or maybe a Keyblade? So when the Keyblade shattered, so too did the box's existence. Or maybe the box was sent into Quadratum and didn't exist in our world and existed in another reality. When we know its purpose is to help combat the beings known as darkness, but we also know it isn't tied to the Dandelion's fight with the beings as darkness, as not only are we fighting them now in Union Cross, but if it was key to this particular battle, it would have been shown. I actually think it will bear some relevance to the battle that awaits Sora in the future, as it's only appearing now, long after the Dandelion's initial fight with darkness. Remember, the Master says the Dandelion's purpose, along with the box, are meant to be seeds sown into the future that will allow Keyblade wielders to finally end darkness. So the Master basically confirmed that this isn't the fight that ends darkness, not even close. We see all 6 of us struggle to even make a dent in just one of the darkness beings, but instead the fights that end darkness beings are in the future, maybe in Kingdom Hearts 4 or the next game. But speaking of darkness, what is darkness's goal? In the last update, Darkness tries to tell Brain that they have no true goal or serve any true purpose. They latch on to people to branch off their hive mind origins and gain a willful and distinct individuality. But Brain points out that Darkness seems way too driven to get in the way of the Union leaders to not have a goal. Now, in this update, Darkness claims that they wish to infect worlds, infect people, But for what reason? Why would darkness want to do all this? I think it's because they wish to branch out and spread their darkness across all people in all worlds, all realms, and all realities. Maybe that's why the forces of darkness are trying to latch onto people and make pure beings of light and darkness, so that they may find a way to infect everything, including things like unreality. Remember, the world of unreality is a world that belongs to neither the light nor the darkness, and by extension the in-between. So maybe darkness wishes to infect the world of unreality with darkness. After all, I'm sure that this world has no defenses for such a force, since it's a world of neither of light nor darkness. I'm sure that it has never even seen anybody use such abilities, at least until Sora arrives to fight Yozora. That way, darkness could have a potential army of darkness-possessed people to fight against the Master. We know darkness is aware of the world of unreality because the Master straight up tells one of the darkness beings about it, calling it a world he can't even conceive. The darkness will use any means necessary to make sure that its being is preserved and that it can't be defeated, which I believe is why darkness is doing what it's doing now, because it knows the Master is trying to rid the world of darkness. But then why did darkness send Darklings after Ven? Remember, once darkness gained a willful and distinct form, it already got what it needed. Why send Heartless after Ven? I believe it's because the Darklings wanted to latch onto Ventus or fill him with darkness, or have beings of darkness hide in the pure light, as we have been told a pure light can be most careless. We have certainly seen Ven's recklessness before, so darkness isn't wrong, but then it circles back to why would darkness latch on to Ven in the first place? Well, remember what we saw in one of the previous updates. Darkness claims that Ven is a chosen person to wield the darkness. But maybe it's a case of mistaken identity? According to Darkness, the Book of Prophecy states that Ven is a supposed chosen inheritor of darkness. But shortly after learning that, we learned from the Master and Lushu that not only does the Book of Prophecies not contain a clear, concise series of events, and a lot of detail that should be there if you want to do something about the future, but Darkness didn't look into the book very well, as it should have. To use a visual to make it clear, people believe the Book of Prophecies wrote down things in a detailed timeline, which makes things abundantly clear when things will happen, when in actuality, it's a simple bullet list of events that happen without any clear dates. And we know this to be the case since the Master admitted this and also stated he doesn't ever want Darkness to take a peek at something as important as detailed timeline of events as concise as they can be. So maybe Darkness saw some points and made an assumption that certain events happen at certain times, and Ventus was chosen to inherit the darkness based on what Darkness read, when in actuality it was someone else that was supposed to inherit it. But I'll get to that later. Speaking of Darkness, later in the same update, Darkness has a conversation with Lushu, who is carrying a body wrapped in a white robe, and Lushu explains that part of his role is to send someone into the future who will sow seeds of light in the future and is referred to as a true Dandelion. But who is this true Dandelion? Right off the bat, I will say that I do not believe that it is Ven, despite what most people are saying, and that's because this cutscene appears to be happening after Maleficent leaves with one of the lifeboats, considering that the lifeboat she took is no longer there. But it is before the Union leaders escape back into the real world from the data world, which we know they will, and if that's the case, then Ven should still be in the data world during this cutscene, so it can't be him. It doesn't add up. But then who could it be? I've seen people say it's Strelitzia, but that also doesn't seem very likely, as we saw her body get destroyed and her heart float up in the same way with the fallen Keyblade wielders during the Keyblade War. Now, of course, there was that one scene during Larium's dream where he did see Strelitzia briefly in a white cloak, but not only is the clothing different, as Strelitzia was in a white robe with a hood similar to the organization cloaks, and the Dandelion is in a blanket, but it's clear the Dandelion has a body, and we saw Strelitzia's body get destroyed. People also have stated that it could be Luxord, but I don't think that's possible either. If Luxord was Lushu's true Dandelion, then it wouldn't make sense for him to question the identity of Lushu during Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind. That still leaves a few candidates though. It could be Demyx, we haven't seen him yet, but we know that he has the ancient Keyblade legacy sleeping within him. He was the first of the 4 to be recruited. It could be Ava. After all, even though we see Ava strike at Lushu in Kingdom Hearts Key and then later fight in the Keyblade War, she fought along with the other unit leaders, but for whatever reason wasn't summoned back along with them. Maybe because she was already sent into the future. One of the chess pieces does seemingly depict a fox, so we know that Ava will arrive sometime in the future. Also, remember Lushu's wording?
As if Ava had her own mission, and she carried it out.
Maybe going into the future as a Dandelion was her mission. So what will this Dandelion do? Well, it's too early if you ask me. I think we have to wait for the next update. But at best, the true Dandelion will ready the next, or for us, current generation of Keyblade wielders to fight darkness. And that is what the Master said would happen with the Dandelions during his talk with Lushu. And speaking of the Master, one of the most intriguing moments in this update comes from the Master's conversation with Darkness. There's a lot to ponder in this one conversation. First off is the fate of Daybreak Town. I know I have talked about this before in previous theories, but I think that even though the Master states that Daybreak Town's only purpose is to nurture the Keyblade wielders who will later be Dandelions, and once the 7 Lifeboats depart, they will sow seeds into the future and leave behind the world to be destroyed, something will save Daybreak Town from complete breaking. After all, we do see it in Scholar at Kylam during our final battle with Xehanort in Kingdom Hearts 3. As I have stated before in a previous theory, there's a good chance that whoever gets the no-name Keyblade, which we know that Lushu passes his no-name Keyblade to one of the unit leaders, as he stated he was going to do that in the Kingdom Hearts 3 secret reports, there's a good chance that someone will use that Keyblade, probably Brain, to change Daybreak Town into Scala at Kylam. Now, something else that is interesting to note is that during the Master's conversation with Darkness, the Master explained that he will be using a lifeboat to travel into the future, and he will use Lushu and the No-Name as a means of doing that, as in order to time travel with the Ark, you need a medium to bring back your form, and someone with memories of you to pinpoint what point in time you will arrive. The Master states that Lushu is the one with the memories, and the medium is his gazing eye. But I thought about something after that. We see the Master talking with Xehanort before his Marker Mastery exam, but according to what we know, once Lushu gave up the Keyblade, he doesn't take possession of it again until Kingdom Hearts 3 after Xehanort dies. So how could he do this? Maybe by possessing someone close enough, I think, to Xehanort and the No-Name Keyblade. As we all know, Lushu kept an eye on the Gazing Eye Keyblade after he gave it up by switching bodies. And maybe once the certain scapegoat would trigger the second Keyblade War came into play, Lushu kept a closer eye on him. We know he did that with Xigbar, but maybe he did it with someone prior. Maybe it was Odin. So for anyone who isn't familiar with Dark Road, Odin is the master of Xehanort and Ericus, and I may have some evidence to suggest that Odin is probably one of Lushu's incarnates. One, and probably the weakest point, is that it was stated that Master Odin's favorite story to tell was the Keyblade War, and he told his students that story quite often. Interesting. Second is that Xehanort knew about the Lost Masters as well as the Gazing Eye, which, if I'm not mistaken, Lushu wouldn't tell anyone that his Keyblade had a Gazing Eye in it. So how could someone like Odin know about that? Unless it was Lushu, and Lushu as Odin told Xehanort about this. How could Xehanort even know about the Gazing Eye unless it was from someone who knew a good deal about the No-Names and even the Lost Masters, as the only other person we know that was familiar with the Lost Masters was Ericus, and it's hinted that Ericus is a descendant of Brain, a unit leader, and therefore connected to the Lost Masters. The timing definitely makes sense if we think about it, as if Luxu was serving as the Keyblade Master in Scholarhead Kylum, he would definitely be close enough to the known name so that the Master could use that to time travel to the future. And there's also the fact that Xehanort knew that Ericus was a descendant of a Union leader. There's no way Xehanort could have known that unless Luxu, someone who had dealt with Brain, who is hinted to be Ericus' grandfather, told him. We know Xehanort is a smart guy, but Xehanort's origins were from Destiny Island, so how does a boy from Destiny Island, regardless of how smart he is, knows the bloodline of one of his friends unless someone tells him? Despite all of this, though, hands down, one of the most interesting things in this update is the 7 crowns. So you guys may be wondering, how exactly do these different points that I've presented in this theory all connect? Well, it has to do with one particular thing. So despite everything I've pointed out in this theory, hands down, the most interesting thing that I have yet to talk about is the 7 crowns. During the Master's conversation with Darkness, the Master talks about traveling into the future and how he won't be traveling alone, and Darkness mentioned the 7 pods or the 7 lifeboats, which is the Ark, and the 7 crowns, which are apparently for the 7 lights. Now this is certainly interesting, as 7 crowns is a brand new term we have never heard before, but will definitely be important somewhere down the line in the future of Kingdom Hearts. First, I want to point out that the Master states that he won't be traveling into the future alone, and if we count up the pods remaining, there's only 5, because there were originally 7, but Maleficent took one and Luxu used the other one for the true Dandelion, leaving only 5 left. Let's also not forget that Subject X in Kingdom Hearts 3 Secret Reports talks about 4 friends, and if she takes one of the pods, that only leaves 4 left. The math adds up. We also know that Ven, Larium, and Elrena will end up in the future, so that takes up 3 out of those 5 pods, and again, if Scold is Subject X, then she takes up the last pod, and the Master would take up the other one. But if we think back to the Kingdom Hearts 3 Secret Reports, remember, Subject X stated she had 4 friends, so the Master can't be one of them, right? But what if there was another set of pods to use out there that the Master will use in conjunction with that of the Union leaders in the Clock Tower? I know this seems kind of far-fetched, but it does make sense considering that we see the foretellers travel from the past, and we know that they time traveled from the past to the present because it was stated that they did that in the Kingdom Hearts 3 Secret Reports. But the only way for them to possibly do that is with the Ark. But then, who will use that remaining pod? There's a good chance it will be Ephemer. I know this isn't much to go off of with that statement, but I think there's a good chance considering that we see him appear in Kingdom Hearts 3 to help out Sora. But then who are the 7 crowns Darkness was talking about? And what purpose do they serve? This is a brand new term in Kingdom Hearts with nothing to hint at what it is, so trying to figure out what it is really challenging, and it's more or less a humongous shot in the dark. But we can guess that the 7 crowns hold some relation to Sora considering his main logo for his character is a crown. Not to mention, we know that Sora is depicted as a crown on the chessboard, and we see Ericus put down a crown chess piece when facing off against the foretellers' chess pieces. Now, I was stuck on this for a very, very long time, and I didn't know what the crowns were, but then I had the most massive epiphany. And this epiphany came from asking, what does this chessboard represent? We see the foretellers going up against Sora, who is a crown piece, but what if Sora wasn't the only piece? 7 crowns up against 7 lost masters, but for what reason? I pondered this until I took a look at the latest Union Cross story update for a clue. When mentioning the 7 lights, Darkness exclaims that if those 7 lights include Luxu, and the Master states, who knows? Anyone can wind up using them. So that tells me that maybe the 7 lights he's referring to aren't exactly the 7 princesses of heart, but it's something that the foretellers can use. Maybe it's the light of the princesses. We have to remember that they recently talked about in Kingdom Hearts 3 that the power of a princess of heart, or I should say their pure light, can be passed from one person to another. So maybe the foretellers can end up taking that light and they become 7 lights. It's really tough to say who exactly are the 7 crowns though? And I thought about making a video about this, but I don't have enough info to properly theorize on the 7 crowns like I did with the 3 keys video. So instead, I'll just be giving out random ideas on who these 7 crowns are, but first I want to discuss exactly the purpose of the 7 crowns, like the 7 pods, 7 princesses, 7 guardians of light, and the 13 seekers of darkness. I imagine these serve some sort of grand purpose. Now the master states that the 7 crowns along with the 7 pods are for the 7 lights, but what could that mean? Remember, the master is trying to rid the world of darkness, so maybe while the 7 pods deal with the light in the future, maybe the 7 crowns deal with the darkness in the future. Maybe the 7 crowns purpose is to inherit or hold onto the darkness beings, and therefore tying their existence with that of another, and not just another, but someone who can be killed, and if the host dies, so does darkness. We know that if darkness can latch onto someone, they hold the risk of being given a physical mortal form, and they can be killed, but what if darkness latches on so closely to their lives that they're linked onto the host? Now, of course, the big question that I'm sure everyone wants me to try and answer is who are the 7 crowns? And like I said, it's pretty difficult to try and pinpoint who it could be, considering that it's way too early, not enough info to go off of, but if I were to guess at least some of them, Sora is definitely one of them. Yozora could be another, as they both have a crown aesthetic, not to mention Yozora is talked about being a true king or a false king, which king is still in there, so that's related to crowns. Riku could also be one of the crowns, as well as Ventus and maybe even Luxord. The 7 crowns, the 7 pods will go forth and set things up for the true Dandelion to bring out the 7 lights, and the conflict will proceed. Well guys, this was certainly a really big theory to work on. But that being said, guys, hope you guys appreciate this. Hope you guys check out my other theories. I have a couple more theories to come out soon. I really want to get this one out though, since I'm pretty sure the final update to Kingdom Hearts Union Cross is going to be dropping very soon, and I wanted to get this out before the final update drops, otherwise I'm going to have to make an entirely new theory. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you guys rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out my Twitter and my Twitch. Let me know what kind of video you want me to do in the description below, just in case you want me to do other types of Kingdom Hearts videos. And before I end this video, I want to say that once this video ends, you are going to notice a brand new outro that was done for me by a user known as Kim Chu. Kim Chu is well known in the Kingdom Hearts content creator community for doing a lot of amazing outros and artworks and other pieces of media for the content creators, and I went to him for a new outro and he did such a fantastic job. So Kim Chu, you rock, my man. But that being said, I hope you guys rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out my Twitter and my Twitch. Check out my Discord. This has been Noir Low Bomber, and I'm out.